Hi guys, this is Mads Mikkelsen and you are listening to Mark and Me podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark, and on today's episode I'm going to be joined by Mads Mikkelsen, one of my favourite actors on the planet. So yes, I'm very excited and I can't wait to get into this. It's another face-to-face interview as well. I was lucky enough to spend the morning with him. We had breakfast, we had drinks, and we got to record a special episode for all of you out there. So it's a dream come true. Anyone that knows this podcast and has listened since the start will know that I started with a list. I wrote 5 names down of people that would be my dream guest. And after interviewing Mads today, I can safely say that's my 3rd name on the list of 5 now ticked off. He is one of my favourite actors on the planet. My favourite TV show nearly of all time is Hannibal, so it goes to show just how much I love the character, but again, the performance from Mads himself. Some of the films he's been in I am absolutely obsessed with. The Hunt is very, very good. The Salvation, Men and Chicken, Doctor Strange, Rogue One. There's some great films, Casino Royale, the list goes on. He's one of the best actors on the planet and I'm so excited that he's joining me today. Now before we get into the interview itself, let's talk a little bit about the last episode. So I was joined by Justin Scholzberg from Hell is for Heroes. Again, one of my favourite bands on the planet. Such a great guy and the response has been fantastic. Thanks to Hell is for Heroes for obviously pushing it out there as well via their social media. It's been a great one for numbers. And again, I really appreciate you all listening. But let's get back into today's episode. As I said, Mads Mikkelsen, one of the best actors on the planet, and I was lucky enough to do this face to face. So without further ado, here's my interview with me and Mads Mikkelsen. Enjoy. So Mads, thank you for joining me on the Mark and Me podcast.
You got it.
How are you doing today?
Well, I'm good. I'm good.
That's good to hear. So I've been researching your career, and obviously you started as a gymnast and you'd had an 8-year career in dancing. What was it that triggered you to want to change to become an actor? Because that's quite a change.
Yeah, as I always say, it was never planned to be a dancer. It was like a Billy Elliot story in the sense that I was just a gymnast and I was in the background of a musical, jumping up and down and doing some flips. And the choreographer thought I had some talent and asked me if I wanted to learn the craft. So I did that. I had a hard time telling my friends, working class friends, what I was doing. But eventually I came around and told them, and they were very interested because there was a lot of girls there and not a lot of men doing it. So I did that for 8 years and I loved it, but I was always a little more interested in the drama of dancing than the aesthetic of dancing, and so it was a natural choice after doing several musicals to look at the actors and saying that's what I want to do. I want to be an actor. So I applied for a drama school and I got in and for 4 years, and then I became an actor at the age of 30.
Brilliant. I mean, that's a bit of a late start for some people.
Yeah.
Living in Denmark and growing up, were you watching a lot of TV and films that were set there, or were you watching Hollywood stuff, or what was your
Both. I mean, there was obviously a culture based in what we did back home. There was some classics that we all watched. I was listening to what we called radio theatre a lot with my brother. I love that because that was, living it up to the imagination, what was happening. You didn't have any images. But I was also, I remember vividly growing up with Bruce Lee was a big hero of mine, and Buster Keaton was a big hero of mine. So it was definitely also international. What I was watching.
Bruce Lee films,
Yeah, Bruce Lee films was, it had an impact on my generation like nothing else.
Yeah.
And I think that Buster Keaton had as well, even though obviously he was way before me. I loved Charlie Chaplin, but I really, really loved watching Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
I think that might be my biggest inspiration ever, to see a man that did so very little.
Yeah.
And when he finally did a little thing, the sky just opened up.
So you said you obviously got into acting at the age of 30, which is a bit later. When you landed the role in James Bond Casino Royale, that scale of a jump, because you were doing a lot of local, smaller films, lower productions, to go into the jump of that, of one of the biggest blockbusters ever, the biggest franchise, how did you adapt? Because it must have blown your mind.
Well, it did to a degree. I think that just working on the film itself was not the turning point, because we were just actors sitting around the table with the director talking about the scene, and we went in there and tried to do what we talked about. It was the aftermath of, on Leicester Square, having the opening night 50,000 people standing there. It was like, all right, I'm in a Bond film.
Yeah,
that's where it dawned on me. But to be honest, just doing the film was just like being an actor in a bigger production where you can take it so far, but it was still a Bond film. You couldn't go ballistic with it, right? No.
So do you have a different approach now when you're doing the big studio films like Marvel, for Doctor Strange, when you've done Star Wars? I mean, it doesn't get any bigger.
No, I tried to make it small every time. I'd always tried to make it a small, independent film, in the sense that this is a scene, it has to work. But I'm always aware what the frames are. I mean, obviously, if you do a Star Wars film, it has to be within that world, and the same with the Bond film. And if you do a Danish film, it's a different framework.
Yeah.
If you do a commercial, that's a different agenda, and you always have to be aware of what that is. And if you understand that, you can still be free within that world.
When you were growing up, did you watch any Star Wars films as every sort of child did in the world, or were you not a fan?
My brother was. I remember he was staying outside for 2 days to get a ticket out. And it was like a phenomenon that nobody understood. It never happened before that.
Yeah.
People were lining up for days to get a ticket. I was maybe a bit too young to get that and jump on that train. I caught it later. As I said before, I was hooked in horror films and Bruce Lee films, and that's what I was watching predominantly. But later on, I caught that train and I was blown away. Even watching the first one today, it's magical. Yeah. What they could do at the time.
So can you kind of describe to me what it was like when you got the phone call for Rogue One and it was like, we want you to be in it? You must have been like, it must be amazing to be a father and know your kids can watch you in a Star Wars film.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. And I'm probably not the first generation. It would be my parents' generation that was. So that's at least three, maybe even 4 generations now.
That's amazing.
That has been part of the franchise.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to watch. There's very few things like that. Maybe the Bond universe, and Marvel is younger, and not as a comic book, but as films. They are. So there's probably nothing like it that has spread so wide, and is still thriving and living in their best ages.
So have your kids watched you in it yet? Have they sat down and did they love it?
Yeah, they did love it. Yeah. They did.
So what are your kids like with you always being a villain? Are they happy with that? Are you happy with that? Do you kind of... Because it's not a joke, but it's constantly when I see you cast, it's, oh, here he is again, he's the villain.
Yeah. Well, I tend to be the villain in American films. I've done quite a few European films where I'm not. I'm just playing somebody. Play Stravinsky, or play a man with glasses, or innocent convicted pedophile.
Yeah, that's a great film.
Right. So I've been around. I've done both.
Yeah.
And if that's what I'm offered in America, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
That I'm not getting nothing offered. So
yeah.
So I'm good with that. The villain roles I've been doing has been very interesting. So and I can always tiptoe back home and do a good guy.
Is that what you like to do? Kind of have a range, so you can go and do the big Hollywood, massive scale of 500 people, where you say hello to 500 people every day, and then you can go and work on Man and Chicken, which is 50 people.
Yes, I'm very fortunate that that's the case for me. I mean, it's not that I'm looking forward to say good morning to 500 people, but I think that you can get away with things in American films that you can in a Danish production, and vice versa. I did my first American film last year called Arctic, where I play the lead, and it's a survival drama. A man's trying to survive on the Arctic.
Yeah.
So that was a game changer. I hope that people will see me with different eyes. But I have been quite fortunate that people do see me with different eyes.
Yeah. And talking about your TV stuff, I mean, Hannibal for me is probably my favourite TV show in the last 10 years. I think it's amazing. The way it looks, the style.
Right.
For you to be cast as Hannibal is huge.
Yeah, that was huge. That was that was. I hesitated for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it offered right away. I was on the table and I did an audition for it. And I knew Hugh Dancy from way back. We did King Arthur together.
Yeah.
My first gig abroad. So we were already friends, which was a super nice thing. To step into Anthony Hopkins' shoes, or Fox's shoes.
Yeah.
Fox's shoes. I mean, they're enormous, right?
Yeah.
But Brian Fuller, he pitched for me, and then he was pitching in, I think, 10 seasons of madness, and I realized that this is a completely different animal we're doing here. This is a TV show, and we have as much time as we want to gradually develop the characters. We don't have to lay it out in 14 minutes like Anthony Hopkins had to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, what he did was immaculate, but what we did was something else. So for that reason, I said, okay, let's give it a try.
Did you study and watch all of Anthony Hopkins' work again and again, or did you try?
I've done it later. After the first season, I went back and watched it. I thought there would be, as I said, it was not directly linked to what he did, but I was curious after a year just watching what he did again, and he's just wonderful in the part.
Do you know that I interviewed Anthony Hopkins last year?
Yeah. Cool.
And he doesn't do interviews ever for a podcast, and I sat with him and I said, what did you think of Mads taking on Hannibal? And he said he doesn't watch telly anymore, he does art, he paints, he does music.
Right.
But he watched one episode and he thought you were absolutely fantastic.
That is a wonderful thing to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm very grateful for that. Well, he's aware that it's a TV thing, so it's the pace is different, and everybody had it on the back of their minds. It was such a successful film of films, especially one of them, and so we had to kind of like take off that coat and put up something else ourselves, our own coat.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased to hear that he enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, he said he never watches telly. He hates telly now because he's 70, 80 years old. He wants to just relax and paint. But he put it on and he watched an episode and he said, that guy was amazing.
That's really wonderful to hear. I mean, I was watching a few episodes of Westworld.
How good is that TV show?
That's super good. And something happens every time he enters the screen. You know, it just becomes different. It just becomes magical somehow. There's a pathos. There's a generosity in what he does that is really unique as an actor. And
even now on TV,
but, and it doesn't get less the older he
no,
gets.
it's frightening. Yeah. And the thing is with him is he looks like he's not even trying.
No, he's not trying, and that's the beauty of the whole thing. And very inspiring to watch him.
Amazing. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. When I watched Series 3 and the news came out that it was cancelled, I was so fucked off. I couldn't have been more pissed off when you get so much shit on TV and then the finest looking. Brian Fuller has made this third season look so hypnotic and the visuals are incredible. You must be furious. You can't be sitting there thinking, yep, that's fine, because it's just getting to that kind of...
We were in a strange situation because we knew after the first season that we were on the edge, right?
Yeah.
We did not have the crowd that they wanted.
No.
And people were fighting for it because the ones who loved it really, really loved it. So we got another season. And after the second season, which in my opinion was even better, we were still on that edge. We were just still, it's going that way and that way. But after the third season, the numbers were better. And we were absolutely convinced that we were going to get a fourth season. So we didn't anticipate that it was going to be cancelled. We did the first two seasons, but not the third one. So it was a big surprise to everyone. And we were looking forward to dive into, the next step of Brian Fuller's universe, which was, when he pitched it, was sounding absolutely mad.
You're teasing me now, saying that he's talked about it and all this, but do you think we might get it one day? Do you think Netflix or Amazon might jump in and save Hannibal?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not only about that. I think there are a few places that are interested. It's about getting the rights for the right books so he can go on with his dreams.
Yeah.
And he had the rights to certain books, but not to other books.
No.
And that means there are certain characters we can't use, and we really desperately need to use some of them.
definitely, especially where the story's getting right now.
Right.
So, are there any roles you fancy? Is there sort of, you do a lot of variety, like you said, you've done a convicted paedophile, you've done a villain of a Marvel film. Are there somewhere you kind of fancy? Is there roles and actors you look at and think, I want to try and do that?
A lot of actors, a lot of directors
Yeah.
that I would love to work with. I think that my dream is always a dream that becomes my dream when I listen to the director who has a vision.
Yeah.
So I don't have like a Hamlet in me. It's like, oh, I gotta do Hamlet. No, not really. It becomes my Hamlet when the director convinces me that this is something worthwhile doing, you know. And so you can be done, finished, tired for a while, and somebody else comes around and pitches you something, and you go, whoa, let's go, you know.
Yeah.
And this is how I work. I don't go around saying, I really want to do a zombie film, I want to do flying kung fu, which are two things I would love to do. I would love to do, but that's not, I mean, it's got to be the story. The story's got to be interesting to me.
Yeah. There must be some directors out there, people like Spielberg, that you must want to kind of have on your CV. And
Scorsese.
Oh, God. You'd like to work with Martin Scorsese and people like Christopher Nolan, because I can imagine you in films with Tom Hardy, people like that. Are there any actors that you'd love to work with that you admire?
Everyone. I always bump into actors I didn't know about. That just you know, flabbergasts me and go, whoa, where you been hiding? You know.
Yeah.
I don't watch a ton of films, so when I meet other actors, older or younger, they can swipe my legs away, and that's the beauty of this job. Tons of them out there.
Now I'm picturing you doing a Bruce Lee film just because of your love and desire.
Can we bring him back?
Oh, that's the dream. That's the absolute dream. And then you're a big horror fan, aren't you?
Yeah.
So imagine you with John Carpenter or...
Oh, Carpenter is my biggest. I grew up with the Halloween one.
Yeah.
And it was just haunting me for years.
Yeah.
And I had to go back and watch it again and again. I wasn't young. I was too young to watch it in the theaters, so my brother was pitching it for me.
Yeah.
Like every day, and this happened. When I finally got to see it, when I finally saw it, I knew everything was happening. I was shitting my pants.
Yeah.
And then luckily it was a double feature film, and then in those days in Copenhagen, and I don't think they had too many restrictions, so the other film was called Deep Throat. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And Deep Throat was apparently not a horror film.
Not at all.
So I was in for a treat that day.
I mean, they're bringing out Halloween again now, and it's supposed to be done very well. We've Respected, and John Carpenter's doing the soundtrack and producing it, so it's going to be good. But
well, let's see. I mean, it can happen. They did it with
It.
Blade Runner.
It as well. It, when that came back out.
Yeah.
Stephen King.
I'll be surprised, but I'll give it a chance. Certain things are for a certain time.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. I'm not sure I would like to see a reproduction of Taxi Driver.
No.
But yeah, I'm open for it. Let's have a look at it.
Because like in the 80s, some of my favourite films were like John Carpenter's The Thing. That's a masterpiece, and that wouldn't work now because it's the 80s feel, the look of it,
exactly.
The practical
80s
effects.
you could get away with certain things in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that was the only way you can do it. You couldn't do it like 2011 in the 80s. But I'm curious about that. That's interesting.
Have you seen the new version of it?
No, I haven't.
See, check it out. If you like the original with Stephen King, it's worth it. It's really well done because there's a lot of rubbish out there. There's so many horrors. There's too much bad.
Yeah.
But now and then they bring stuff like The Babadook or these original films that are worth a watch.
Yeah.
So how do you fancy a career in directing? Because you obviously like jumping around careers. Is that something you'd like to do? Get on the other side of the camera?
I'll be a liar saying no.
Yeah.
I think that so far my thirst has been quenched. Is that how we say it?
Yeah.
By always being invited in.
Yeah.
Especially, obviously, in the Danish films I've done, I'm always invited in the early stages of the script writing and I think I have in a humble way, I would say I have a talent of not just focusing on my character. I'm focusing on what the film is trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And then I was like, why don't we go that way then? Then we achieve it even more. And so for that reason, I've been invited in. So I'm not that thirsty for it yet.
I think 10 years time.
One day, yeah, maybe when people get really fed up with this thing.
When you've done every villain ever.
Yeah.
And how do you like to spend your time when you're not filming? Because you said you like to have breaks, so you'll go and film, you'll do TV for 6 months, a year, you'll do big Hollywood films, and then you'll take some time out.
Yeah, I have to. I mean,
Yeah.
The biggest chunk of my work is now abroad, so that means I'm away from my family. So when I'm done with that, I need a break. I need to be with my family.
Yeah.
If I was working back home, I think I would have been going a little more non-stubby.
Yeah.
You know, but I have to take 2, 3, 4 months out every year. So what do? Well, it doesn't look like it now, me chain smoking and having a morning coke, but I am a sporty guy. I ride my bicycle, I play tennis all the time, I play handball, I love doing sports.
Is that how you look so fit at your age? You just...
Yeah, that's a combo of metabolism and doing sports, I guess.
Yeah, my wife is obsessed with you, and I think she would leave me for you. I think you've done well there. You've got...
Not a good sign.
No. So I need to do more sport and smoke more.
Yeah, chain smoking and
drink Pepsi at 8 o'clock.
And get your metabolism stabilised.
And do you enjoy being famous? I mean, it's not something you can handle.
There's nothing I can do about it.
No.
There's absolutely positive things coming this way by being famous.
Yeah.
Being famous for the fame, I think that, yeah, these days you can actually become rich doing that. But I think that being famous for what I do and people like what I do is obviously very important to an actor. So yes, I embrace that. Walking out the street and go, oh shit, yeah, okay, good morning, and here's a photo, is a different thing. I can't control that. Right?
No.
So, but I have a tendency of forgetting that every day. I don't go around as a paranoid person going, oh, I can't walk the street today.
No.
I simply forget it every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best approach to it.
And what's your advice for people that are listening to this interview that want to become an actor? Because you've proved you can do it in your 30s.
We have a hunch when we do stuff that this can go one way or it can go the other way, and the hunch is right. And so you either say yes or no to certain things, and when you say yes, you've got to fight for that hunch.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've seen some beauty in a story and you feel it's going a wrong way, you fight for it. Be persistent. But if the director persuades you that you're on the wrong track, listen to that as well. But you have to be listening to your inner first voice.
Yeah.
And that there's something pure about that one. And the rest is up to everybody individual. They all tackle it differently. But don't give in if you think it's worth fighting for.
And if you were to retire tomorrow,
right?
What's your finest moment?
Good one. You were talking career here, right? Because obviously
everything you've done to date.
We'll go back and talk about having my kids, of course.
But anything to do with films or TV. If we were watching a highlights reel of Mads Mikkelsen, what would be that video we saw?
I don't think I can take anything out. It's going to be a vague answer here because I think they all complement each other.
Yeah.
Without Man and Chicken, Hannibal would look differently.
Yeah.
And without Pusher 2, The Hunt would look differently. And so forth. I think they go hand in hand. I've never done anything work-wise that I regretted. I've done things that were better than other things, but there's no regrets because you learn from everything, and we always start out with trying to make the best thing possible.
And when it wasn't going your way, I read that, was it like Fantastic Four that you just thought, fuck this, I'm not doing it?
Yeah, well, I wasn't offering it. So it wasn't even close. It was an audition where I found myself humiliated by standing there and reaching out for that sign over there, 40 yards away or whatever, and 2 lines, and it was like, what am I doing here? It's like, I don't have rubber arms. This is stupid, you know.
Yeah.
And I just felt that it was going the wrong way with my job, right? So I was just like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna do auditions for things I can, embrace.
Yeah.
And not for things that obviously imagine I have long arms. Please don't let me act it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a down thing. It was just a way of approaching Hollywood that is quite different than it is back home.
And if you had to choose, final question, if you had to choose to do the smaller films forever or the big Hollywood ones, forget the paycheck, forget the limelight, what's your heart? You started with the independent films.
I did. And
look at The Hunt. That's kind of a mix between the two.
Well, The Hunt is a small-scale film in any way possible. Just became big because it was good. I grew up with it. That's what I watched first. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't watch the small French independent films.
No.
And when I became an actor, that's why I landed first. So my heart is there, but my heart is also at the bigger films. I think there's a movie magic is it's magic, and you can't put words on why it is. It can be magic in a small film. It can be magic in a big film. When I watch Singing in the Rain today, I melt.
Yeah.
You know, it's just immaculate. It's an immaculate film, and to say that I'm not going to be part of that universe. I'm only going to do my little things in Denmark would be heartbreaking, and vice versa.
Well, no one can ever say Mads Mikkelsen is typecast. Okay, you've been a lot of villains, but you do what you want when you want. Yeah,
I think I do. Obviously, I don't get offered everything in the world, but among the things I do get offered, I do what I want. And
that's a good place to be.
It's a fantastic place. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I've got so many friends who've not been working for years, right? So even having this discussion, what do I choose?
Yeah.
It's like hardly anyone gets to choose, right?
Yeah.
And we're having this discussion. That means I'm a very fortunate person. So I'll just rest my case. I don't want to choose.
So there it is. There's the interview with me and Mads Mikkelsen himself. An absolute dream come true, and by far one of the greatest actors on the planet. So, yeah, it really did happen. This isn't a dream. I can't believe it. It's here. You've just listened to it, so it really did happen. I'm not still pinching myself, but it's amazing. To actually do the interview face-to-face, I think makes a huge difference. As you heard with Jamie Lemon's interview only a couple of weeks ago, the sound quality is better, you get a better atmosphere, it just feels more real. I love watching the reactions of the kind of actor or the musician or whoever I'm speaking to. It makes it a much more kind of intimate interview. And on this occasion, we were outside, we were chilling, we'd had some breakfast, we had some coffee, we had some cokes, we were chilling out, there was no rush, there was no one in the background telling us we only had 5 minutes to do the interview. We went at our own pace, and I think the results are great and shows just how much a difference can make doing these interviews face to face. It would be a dream to do all these interviews face to face moving forwards, but it's all about availability and kind of flexibility with the guests I speak to. But I am making it my purpose to go out there and do as many interviews as I can face to face. And thanks to you guys on my Patreon, you might have seen this week on my social media, I've been able to invest in some new gear, so I've now got a brand new recorder to do more location recording, so expect some really big interviews hopefully over the next few months. I want to say a big thanks to Mads for coming on the episode. As I said at the start of today's episode, he's one of my top 5 requested names that I wanted to get, and to have that one ticked off alongside, let's be honest about it, Jessica Hines was up there, and obviously Anthony Hopkins himself. But I don't reveal the final 2 on the list. It's just a case of hopefully I can get them, and hopefully at the time you'll then find out who they are. But in the meantime, I'm still going to be going out there and interviewing lots of more people. We've got another episode only coming in a couple of weeks. As always, please keep the support coming. It's absolute gold. Please go on markandme.com where you can have access to my Twitter, my Facebook, my Instagram. The episodes are now on iTunes, they're now on Podomatic, and they're also on Spotify, so they should be able to be accessed all over the world. And my Patreon is doing really well. More and more people are signing up all the time. But without my Patreon, I can't do the stuff like getting new equipment. I can't travel the country to do these interviews. It all helps. This isn't my main income at all. It's a hobby. But if you keep helping me, I will get more and more episodes. And I'm really hopeful that the more I get, the more people that will listen. So that's the kind of big goal for me. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. And I'll be back again in a couple of weeks' time. Take care.
People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange. People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. you're strange. Faces come out of the rain when you're strange. No one remembers your name when you're strange. When you're strange. When you're strange.